Morning, everyone. My name is Ann Becknell. I am the treasurer for the governing board in Sun City West, and I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock. And if you would join me to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have established a quorum of our Budget and Finance Committee this morning. We almost gave away Bill's seat, but he got here in the last 45 seconds and got to keep his seat. I'm going to read the meeting procedures. The governing board and its committees conduct all their meetings in compliance with Arizona Planned Community Association open meeting laws per ARS 33-1804 and in concert with RCSCW bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order will also be followed at all meetings as appropriate, consistent with Bylaw 3.07, procedures for owner-member meetings, and standing rules number 2 and 3. All right, take care of that. So the first order of business, we want to approve 2.01, approval of the minutes from February 3rd. They were posted online. Does anybody have any questions about the meeting minutes? Any changes? Seeing none and seeing none online, I don't see any audience heading to the microphone. We're going to go ahead and approve those minutes and let them go stand. We also have approval of minutes from the February 17th Budget and Finance Committee meeting on here. Not sure where we had both 3rd and 17th. Anybody have any questions about the 17th? Seeing no questions online, we'll go forward. So the first part of new business we want to cover this morning is to talk about workman's comp renewal. And we have Brian Wilder here with us from Marsh McLennan to give us an update on that. Brian?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the committee for letting me come in. Again, my name is Brian Wilder. I am Senior Vice President with Marsh McLennan Agency, and today we're talking workers' comp. The term for the workers' comp is 1/1 of 26 for 12 months. So I'll just get right into it. And please ask any questions that you may have as we go, and I'll save, of course, some time at the end. What I'm going to go through is the current situation, how are the losses going from what's expected losses also to the actual losses, some claims analysis, and then what is the team doing to continue on this great trend to keep losses down, which ultimately will keep the premium down as well. So for the 26 workers' comp renewal, we're recommending moving forward with CopperPoint. CopperPoint is the incumbent insurance carrier on the workers' comp. And the way this is set up is there are two primary class codes. There's 9060, 9061, and then the payroll, and then you have the rate to the right, which ultimately goes to premium. The way workers' compensation works is that you have, for every $100 of payroll, you take that to the rate, and that ultimately goes to the premium. And then as you move down here, as you look at the slide, we have what's called a manual premium. And then the factor, that second line is the experience modification. As you can see, that jumps up the premium. And this is something I want to dig into a little bit deeper and to highlight really the great things that the team, Kirsten Peterson and her team have done to drive the EMOD down. We are currently at an EMOD of 1.59. What that means is that the governing body, which is called NCCI, 1.0 is the average for the class codes. So anything below that we would see as favorable. Anything above that is not as desirable. So the intent is to drive below 1.0. And that's what we're doing. We're at a 1.59. But if we continue on the path that we are going down right now, we expect the EMOD to drop below 1.0 next year. And we're forecasting a 0.91 for next year, which would be a drop of probably over $100,000 for next year. So we're in a good path. And I'll talk about a little bit later of what goes to that EMOD, but it's 3 years in the past. So what's going on now is not to do with today, the EMOD, it's 3 years in the past. So as you go down here, you see that the overall premium is $226,283, with last year being just under $263,000. I will tell you that we did go to market, and we had two other insurance companies that were competitive. One was below CopperPoint, but the reason why it was our recommendation and the team agreed to stick with CopperPoint was because of two primary reasons. One being a few years ago when there was challenging losses that were going on in the community, Copper Point stuck with us. They proposed a non-renewal, and we got them to stay on board with a commitment that we would move forward. We would aggressively go after claims to get them down, to ultimately drive that EMOD down. And they committed to us to make that happen, and they went through there. Also, Copper Point's one of the strongest insurance companies in the market. And when it comes to monoline workers' compensation, just one line of coverage, there aren't many insurance companies that are in play. So it didn't make sense from a strategic standpoint to move away from them at this point. But just to know that we did go to market, and there was another option as well. A little deeper here, this slide, the way this is set up, you have actual losses versus expected. And if you look at the bottom, the gray is actual, and this is based on 2022, 2023, and 2024. Those are the 3 years that make up that experience modification that I referenced earlier. So the blue is where the governing body expects the losses to come in. And as you can see, 2022 was a rough year. A lot of that was, I would consider, fluke type losses, something that's outside of control of the team. However, they still hit the experience mod, which led to the numbers that we're seeing now. However, you can see 23 was strong, and 24 was excellent, and 25 is tracking that same way. So for next year, 22 will fall off, and we're going to expect to have 3 strong years, which is going to turn the table significantly. And yeah, please stop me at any point if you have questions. This is a busy slide, but I'll just kind of talk to the highlights. The blue bars are the experience modification, and then the orange is the loss ratio. So as you can see in 24, 25, we have the high EMOD. However, the correlating of those years, the correlating losses is very low. So that's just going to mirror the same messaging that I spoke about a few seconds ago, that we expect to see a significant drop in experience mod. So we're tracking in a very good direction. And this is similar. So the years are staggered, starting at 21, 22, all the way up to current term. You see the amount of claim activity in the orange, so 19, 19, 25. But the blue is the incurred losses. So we're having some claim activity, but again, Kirsten and her team are just doing a wonderful job to go get these claims, get them in, get them processed, treat those individuals that need it, and then hopefully either get them back to work or keep them working so it doesn't cause a lot of payout when it comes to the workers' compensation. So this is a very positive slide as well, I would say. And these are the type of injuries. And none of this, I would say, is surprising. I won't spend a lot of time, but you have strains, sprains, punctures, for what the community does and what the workers do. They're out, it's hot, they're bending over, things are going to happen. So we'll continue to work with the team to try and drive these down as much as possible, but nothing out of the ordinary for what we see. And then from the underwriter, just a couple highlights, then I will kick it off to you to questions. The spikes that we saw in 21 and 22, we saw those pretty much across our book of business. There was just some challenges coming out of COVID, and with your community specifically, there were just some random fluke claims, some of which that were COVID related. We have an excellent closing ratio of 96%. So what my team does, along with Kirsten and Copper Point, is we meet quarterly, we do claims analysis, and we try and go through each claim to figure out how we can drive down the amount of reserves and other factors that can lead to higher premium costs. Low number of indemnity, that ties into what I just said. No litigation going on, which is excellent for everyone here. And then we're just tracking in a very positive direction with significant premium savings expected next year. And what are we doing? I touched on some of these already. It's just very a proactive approach with your team and Kirsten, and then along with us and Copper Point, and then ultimately employee education, on-site visits. We have a triage line, and then pushing a return to work program. So really just partnering with everyone here to get that EMOD down and keep your people safe. That's ultimately what we're going for, is keeping people safe. And, and that ties to lower premiums. It's good for everybody. So I think that wraps it up on my end. Do you have any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Brian? Bill?
I'm just wondering about the proactive actions that are being taken as far as prevention preventing accidents, preventing, before you get a claim, preventing everything. And I don't see that, what's happening with prevention.
Yeah, a lot of that's going to be engaging with your team, whether it's depending on specifically, like let's take landscaping, it would be education on being in the heat. It would be two-person carry. It's things along those lines, whether it's ladder safety. We have an online tool where there's a lot of resources called the Succeed platform, engaging with the team. But we also have salaried loss control representatives that can come out and team with the organization to find ways to drive that down. It's really going to be across the board. You speak, Cliff?
Yeah. Can I have that clicker too? 2 years ago, we budgeted a safety position, put it in the budget, in the annual budget process. I don't know if you all remember, we went from a part-time safety to a full-time safety person. And when you talk about processes and procedures, safety processes and safety procedures, you can't get to a year where you have 8,000 in claims in a in an environment that we operate in with all the different things that we're doing here. And if you think about also the demographics of our staff, I mean, think about all the tables and chairs and facilities assistants, all the heavy lifting, all the things that happen on the golf courses with the machinery and just all of the labor intensive work that we do around here. Those processes that Kirsten and Jeff and the management team put in place it's all paying off. I mean, it's working. Specifically, what those processes are, Brian won't be able to really speak on those. The people that could speak on that would be Jeff. Well, he would, but not specifically what we're doing. But the specific things that we're doing, the management team at the various departments could talk about those things. And then Brian partners with us to give us, industry standards, documentation, best practices, things like that we can take, review, and employ ourselves. But yeah, we could never get to where that's not luck. I mean, luck is at play in this. Don't get me wrong, but to get to that spot right there, that is due diligence.
Thank you, Cliff. Anybody else have a question for Brian? Chris?
So, thanks for the presentation. How long have we been with Copper Point?
Geez, it's 5+ years or so. I'll find out. I'll circle back to the committee and give you the amount of years.
The other question I had is, you mentioned that we went out to market and we did have some other bids.
Yes.
Difference in premium. How big of a difference did we pass by? Was it a 5% or 10%, or do you know?
Yes, it was. The other one was with Ascot. It was approximately $202,000.
10%, 8, 9, 10% reduction. And then are the previous years weighted at all?
No. Sorry. Yeah. No, it takes the 3 years. There is a complex formula. So they take in frequency and they take in severity. They actually weight the frequency higher than severity because that looks at behaviors more than, I would say, just one-off. On top of that, depending on the front end of the losses are weighted heavily than what we call the excess. So there is a formula for it, but each year it is the same weight. But within it, there's frequency. It can be a pretty in-depth equation, but I have all the breakouts of that as well. So every year they provide us with all the numbers that get you to that experience modification, and I could provide that to Cliff and the team to provide to you if you'd like to get into that as well.
No, I just wanted to know what our risk was if we had a, unforeseen bad year coming up right now. Would we kick right back into our high rate?
That's a great question. So they consider the current year too green because the claims haven't developed yet. So as of right now, you're looking at 22, 23, 24. So, knock on wood, let's just say we have a bad situation happen, then it wouldn't be the next year, but you'd see that on the following year. That's why if you have a rough claim year, it sticks with you for 3 years, and it can be a challenge to get through it. That's why you just got to keep hitting it hard. And Cliff did mention the demographics, and there are some challenges there. So we just got to be very proactive with it to keep it as low as possible.
Real good. My last comment was just on the list of injury types. I was kind of disappointed to see, other is our highest rate. It seems like when other is the highest account, then it's time for a new category somehow or another. But that's us, right? Is that a?
So that's a Copper Point. And,
Okay.
And the thing is that there's a lot of times when they do their classification that they get into buckets where they can't give it. Like if it's multiple points, they put it into other. And because of Privacy Act issues, I didn't go to like specifically all the claims, which we have all that data that we provide to your team as well. But we know exactly every claim, what happened, and then that could be provided if you'd like to see that as well.
And keep in mind those claims, the claims on that, or the incidents, the different incidents tie back to, I believe, the chart, which is a 3-year total of claims. It's 22 through 25. So you're talking about 3 years worth of incidents. And the other could be, it's not significant to have, there's no one thing that's significant to have it its own category if you look at the total number of claims. Anyway, the other thing is the strategy piece on renewal. We did go to market, but we sat and discussed this operationally, and we thought, if we didn't have a good year this year, if we jump ship, okay, and at the time we had when we were doing this renewal, we had very little data on this year, but if things didn't continue to trend the way that they were, they would just hammer us the next year when they could. And with staying with Copper Point, we wanted to give that an additional year, and then next year when we go to market, really consider, either staying with Copper Point or jumping ship with, whatever type of rates we get. So there was a strategic move there. We thought that was the right move. We talked to Brian about that, and he gave us his input on that. And the management team decided that we would stick this year and go forward from there.
I'll just add on is that when we were on that non-rule with Copper Point, we had no one else. So it was going to have to go to what's called the assigned placement, which is a very bad place to be from a premium standpoint. And they did stick with it. And let's just say we did move and then we had a bad year. They're probably not in play next year. So you have the current carrier get off, and then you get in a situation where in our market, we call it burning a market. So you just got to be careful with that. But it's a decision that just needs to be talked through.
Yeah, to me, it makes sense. I just wanted to know how much of a reduction that we looked at and just made that decision.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Any questions from the audience? Oh, I'm sorry, Mickey.
So I just want to comment on staying with the carrier. I think that this is a good example of the cheapest is not always the best in this kind of, because we're looking at, when you look at what the loss experience is, if you go back to the chart where it shows the 385% loss experience. Yep, even the numbers. So look at that, $504,000. Double the premium, right? Double the premium. Nobody's going to stick with you for very long. And when you change going forward, they're going to still know about this, right? They're still going to know about this. And so the fact that they did stay with us, and frankly, the premiums are not, have not been outrageous in these years, I think speaks to a good relationship that you would not want to dismiss.
Yeah, you make a great point. I will make two things there. We were the largest writer with Copper Point in the state, in the nation, and we definitely had to leverage some to make that happen. But it's been a great partnership. And I will tell you too that carriers' new business budgets, they can be much more aggressive with new business than they can with staying on. So that's just expected. You got to be careful of someone getting in and then maybe changing down the road. So Jacob's the other. Very good points.
Thank you. Anybody else? I see no questions online. I see no one in the audience. Thank you very, oh, I'm sorry. I do have one from the audience. Please just state your name and your number, and you can fill it out once you've finished.
Ed Westell, 115-908. Back in '22, you talk about no litigation this year. What percent of that total was caused by litigation versus?
I have that off the top of my head, but I can get that for you.
I don't know how Arizona is as far as workman comp. I'm from a state that was very liberal, so I don't know what your experience is with litigation claims.
Well, I have a significant amount of experience with them. I will tell you that once litigation's involved, take longer to solve, and they're much more expensive, which hurts your claims history. But we have all that information we can provide on the litigation breakdown if the team would like to provide that.
It seems once you get litigation, it's like a slow.
It's a 4-letter word to us,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, right. The other thing is, that was Copper Point's Pareto, but what does Rec Center's Pareto show for injuries? We have that same type of other being high, or we have a better?
I don't understand that question.
The Pareto that you showed where you had all other at 35, okay, that's Copper Points, but from our safety program here, what are we showing as the type of injuries, and then how is our program being used to attack that? So it's not to you, it's to the Rec Center.
Incidences or something like that, or just, I guess that would go to your team.
Yeah, your program has to look at some data, and I just wonder what the data is from our standpoint as far as what we're seeing.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kirsten Peterson, and I work in the HR department and safety. And so when we look at every single claim, we know exactly what that claim entails. So while the Copper Point has a bucket for other, we know specifically which each of those claims are. And so we do tend to look at instances of, what caused the incident, what could we do differently. And to that end, I do, when we get done here and we've answered your question, I do want to bring Jeff Nelson up, because we have, to Cliff's point, we've hired a full-time safety person that has taken us to whole new levels of engagement with our work group. So we know exactly what those claims are.
Is that available? I know you have a safety program, but you look at your data. I don't know if it's back sprains, if it's cuts, is it falls?
Yeah.
So your program, you Pareto what it is, and then your proactiveness goes to those type of injuries. I don't know from a Rec Center viewpoint what kind of injuries you face. What are your, just curious how.
I have to interrupt for just a second. We've exceeded our 2-minute question. Does the committee want to allow this to continue? I need some consensus.
We can go offline. I don't,
Take it offline?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that all right?
that's fine with me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
In the community that we are, in the workplace that we are, specific instances of types of injuries, we try to guard those because it is personally identifiable. So we try not to specifically say exactly how many, we know.
No, but is your program based on that then? So if
Yes.
you're attacking
Yes,
cuts, you
absolutely.
can assume that cuts is probably a pretty high. Okay,
Absolutely.
so I just want to know what the Pareto is, or what the type, I don't know what your experience. Is it backs, is it what is it?
It's a variety of things based
Yeah,
on
but
that
your
chart.
your plan attacks the 80-20 rule of what you're, what are you going to go after this year? Is it balls, whatever. So we can do it offline. I don't want to get into who's who. I just want to know the name. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Kirsten. Any other questions from the committee? All right.
I'd like to introduce, if you would give us a bit of time to introduce Jeff Nelson, and I'd like to have him come up and just talk about some of the changes that we've been instituting since he came on board in May. Right. Work for you?
Good morning, everybody. As I mentioned, my name is Jeff Nelson. I'm a full-time safety person here. I've been here since May. I come from a different background than what I'm dealing with here, a construction, heavy manufacturing background. I've also consulted with insurance companies, so I've kind of seen a lot of stuff here. One thing I have done that I've broken out our injuries by workplace. In the past, the OSHA record-keeping rule or the log has been encompassing the whole recreation center, where I've broken it down by golf courses, individual golf courses, individual rec centers and whatnot, so we can focus on those things there. We are looking at the different types of injuries and what we can do as far as training, and that's one thing that I've done a lot. Obviously in construction, manufacturing, training is huge. I'm trying to develop more of a training program here. I can teach the first aid, CPR, AED, the hands-only CPR for people, and we're doing that. We can offer that in-house now as opposed to using the fire department. I've done other trainings, accident investigation for some of the team leaders, the supervisors, so forth. I've done bloodborne pathogens, the HAZCOM training. Another thing I've done to facilitate things, I've standardized our monthly inspections. We have people throughout the different rec centers, golf courses that do monthly inspections, and I've kind of simplified that, made it a little easier for them to do that. Before it was all over the board and they had different forms to use and so forth. We've also purchased bulk first aid supplies, which is going to cut down on costs, for getting out to people, and we've helped golf ops with some first aid kits and so forth, and we've got that out there. The PAs out there have been trained in how to use those AEDs and so forth, and, and just continuously training, and we do look, and I'm trying to break down previous year's injuries based on the golf courses and whatnot, and just seeing where we're at there and the ways we can attack things, try to get better as an organization. I think we've come a long ways. I really enjoy my time here. I do stay plenty busy. There's always something going on. I am bilingual. I can teach safety classes to our Hispanic workforce as well, which I think is beneficial. But anyway, that's what I'm about. Questions?
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so that takes care of our new business 3.01. Let's move on with 3.02, the capital improvement projects. Herschel, I guess you're up first.
Yes, good morning. What I will be doing today is updating the major CIP projects, those that are over $50,000. Any changes that have happened since our last meeting, and I can also answer any questions you have on any of the other projects as well as the ones that are in the color blocks. So just to give you a quick update, the ARC Phase 3 addition project that has been pulled from this year's budget at the request of the club. They want to take a look at the drawings and come up with some value engineering changes, and I anticipate it will be proposed in next year's budget. So the only major change that I have on any of the projects right now is the courtyard renovation. This was a project, a late addition to our CIP project by the Properties Committee. And what you see here are some renderings of what the courtyard could look like. Based on that, we went out and we got some budget quotes for some furniture. We got a quote for $90,000. This includes new furniture and electrical. Russ's team is going to have to do some electrical work out there to put up some lighting that you saw in that previous picture. The quality of the furniture here would be a mid-level quality furniture that would last approximately 7 to 10 years. And what I have here are some renderings from the company that gave us these quotes of what the style of the furniture may look like. This is not necessarily what we're going to purchase. This is just an example of what could be purchased and what the courtyard could look like, as well as this furniture that's going to be installed. I will say one thing, this is a budget number we're trying to get. We still haven't hammered out the amount of furniture we're going to get in terms of the number of people that are going to be seated. So that's going to change a little bit, but we feel that $90,000 will give us a mid-level quality type furniture that could last 7 to 10 years. So I'm available to answer any questions or you have on anything.
Questions? Rick?
What type of activities are we planning to use this facility for? I mean, we've got empty spaces at Coons that are almost the same type situation, and those are not 100% utilized. Do we have events planned to utilize this facility, or is it just a nice to have to make sure it looks like the place is occupied?
One of the things I got from the properties committee who brought this forward was they had recently gone on the tours of some of the other properties around the area, and they saw areas like this that they felt were warm and inviting for visitors that came to see. I do know that they would like to do some sort of activities out there, maybe a Friday night social, some kind of thing like that. Those details haven't been hammered out yet. So we have the furniture in the budget right now, and I think some of that other stuff is yet to come.
I mean, are they thinking of maybe making it an entertainment area, having maybe a bar or something like that, where it'd bring people in so we could utilize the space? Other than
I
that,
think, yeah, there's nothing off the table right now, and I have heard everything you just mentioned. I have heard those as potential possibilities, yes.
well, I mean, the question comes down, is this a need or nice to have? So, in my point, so.
Right, anybody else? Chris?
So Herschel, I'm kind of surprised that ARC decided to postpone that. I thought they had a timing issue with the donated steel. You know anything about that? Can they still get that donation?
So based on the conversations we had with them, I think they are still fairly confident that they'll be able to get those donations in the future.
Okay. I know there's a big part of it. That was 150 or something like that, 1,000, right? Donated. Thanks.
Any other questions? Mickey?
Yeah, my question on the furniture, so you look at the drawings, they're kind of rattan looking, a little bit more luxurious initially. And then with the $90,000 budget, looked a little more utilitarian to me, if that's what is available with that. I'm going to go on the other side of Rick's comments and say that I think we need these kinds of spaces. When I go over to the Grand, I've got 4 cousins who live over at the Grand, and I look at some of their very inviting spaces where you can have a cocktail, you might be able to have something to eat. They have music at night and things like that, and they are very welcoming. They're very welcoming. I think that I think those spaces enhance both the utility and the attractiveness of our facility. And I would be in favor of maybe upgrading from mid-level to, and not to say that it would need to be twice as much or whatever, but I would look at the attractiveness of that furniture and make a decision based on what would enhance that space as opposed to mid-level, and we were able to keep the budget at $90,000.
That's a good question. Just so, because we recently did this at Kuntz, and we put the new couches and the new chairs and things out there in front of the theater, between the theater and the women's club, would you consider those to be mid-level? Or are those, what level would you have considered that furniture?
Well, Sabrina's not here. She would be the best one to answer that question. I believe it's a similar quality furniture as what's over at Kuntz.
Okay.
Yeah, and I, like I said, what I just want to make sure, so for example, we had plastic-looking white tables in your mock-up. That is not the look I would go for. I would want it to look more, I would just like it to look more upscale. Otherwise, it looks a little bit like we put,
Good point. So I think it would be nice for us to get some better drawings maybe, or some better renderings of the types of furniture. Would that help? Yes? Okay? Bill?
Do we have a record of usage at Coon since it's been remodeled? Are there records? I mean, is someone keeping track of whether this is a need or a want? I mean, is it really being used now? Is
Well,
it
it would
tracked
be
at all?
anecdotal because there's no swap-in card, but personally, because I go to the women's club at least 3 times a week, and I see in the mornings, there are always groups, the bike riders meet up there and have their meet up to start off or meet up when they end, and I see lots of people coming through there, especially during the theater time, but that's just anecdotal. The Kuntz Courtyard, of course, because we do the talent spotlight out there on Wednesdays, that furniture gets used, but that furniture's quite dated and could definitely use a refresh on that furniture. So I think the information would be anecdotal at this point, but from my own personal experience, I see it used several times throughout the day. And that's just a drop-in. There's nowhere to get coffee or food or anything else. We see people bringing coolers in and sitting down and having little picnics there, so. And Dave?
Hi, I just had a couple comments on the other items in the capital budget. One is the Stardust Golf Course irrigation project. I don't think, those numbers aren't completely complete yet, is that correct? Or finalized?
Yeah, Todd will come up, but while Todd's coming up, I just want to say just to close the loop on the courtyard furniture, we'll be presenting at Properties on Thursday some more information on this. So stay tuned for that meeting, watch it on YouTube, show up to the meeting or whatever. There'll be some more information that we'll have at the meeting. The $90,000 price tag is really, it's a mid-level furniture, but there's so much furniture that's in the number of pieces and all of that. It's what's really driving the cost up there. So, in terms of design, if we decide to scale it back a little bit in terms of the amount of furniture, that would create some savings, and we could potentially do a higher level of furniture. So a lot of this is still kind of preliminary. This just got brought up, so we're trying to, provide some ideas and details into what we're looking at. But until we actually go do the project, there'll be some uncertainty in what it's going to look like specifically and how it's going to be designed. So we're trying to give a high level look at that. But there will be some more details and information given at Properties, and also in terms of want versus need. This is a capital project. You can look at every capital project and in your own mind determine what's a want and what's a need. So that's always subjective. What I would say is that this did come from our Properties Committee, and it is supported by the board because the board is the one that went on the property previews. So this does have support, and it did come up through the committee. It's just obviously you can weigh in on it. You can determine for yourself if it's a want versus a need, but it was brought up through those channels.
As far as the Stardust project goes, we've received the bids. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow to review the bids and look at the numbers. So at the next budget and finance meeting, I'll have those numbers for you.
Thanks, Todd. And then one other thing, I just want to renew my concern over the $100,000 for moving the ball machines. I think it's a lot of money to move ball machines, and we may have complaints even if we do move them. So that's all.
I don't think that the committee has decided to push that forward or not yet, but I think our next meeting will be the time when we want to go ahead and make the call outs for anything that we think need to have more review.
Okay, so next meeting we'll probably start the pull-out process. Okay, that was one of my questions I had. Okay.
Next meeting, we'll start the pull-out process. Thank you. I see Christine coming to the podium.
Thank you so much, Chairman Becknell. On the identifying these items, it's items for review, as was described. And as Mickey pointed out, for example, you can make a variety of recommendations through your committee to the board. It could be spend more money on the courtyard. I know that sounds crazy coming from budget and finance, but it could be advocating for that, or it could be something else like whatever you decide. It could be a scope change and so forth. The other thing I wanted to contribute, I believe that Director Becknell alluded to this, Cliff did as well. The courtyard renovation project was a priority of the governing board. All right, it doesn't mean you don't have to support that. I'm just saying that Herschel and his team were not the folks that came up with this idea. This came from residents. It came from the governing board. Just as an FYI. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the capital improvement plan for Herschel? Thank you, Herschel. Oh, I'm sorry. I have no questions on the online, but I see we have a guest at the podium. Oh, sorry, Bill.
Just regarding the projects in general from my past planning, and that I typically like to have a purpose and an end result first, and then the design afterwards. To put together a place that might do things in the future doesn't have an end result. You don't have a purpose, and that's why it's hard to figure out what kind of furniture you want to put in there. I think there should be a written, specific reason for this thing coming into being. You need a purpose, a point, the target. Then the planning becomes a little more easier. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the board was at least fairly specific with what it is we were trying to do. We recognize that we have no welcome center for anybody that's looking to move to our community. Doesn't exist anymore. What used to be at Pora and other locations is not there, and we need to develop that sort of a welcome center look. That R.H. Johnson is our diamond in the tiara, as it were, and that we need to do everything we can to make R.H. Johnson look as exciting and up-to-date and friendly and I want to live there kind of thing that we can possibly do. And part of that is potentially figuring out ways to serve coffee in the morning and wine in the afternoon, as well as having the welcoming committee kind of thing. So that there is a plan. There's a reason.
Okay, well, I think it would be useful to have an affinity diagram or something that points to it with everything coming into there. That would really put a, reason for coming into being.
Thank you. We have a resident at the mic, Mr. Scott.
Jim Scott, 404675. And I'm on the properties committee. And as we walked that area, that was pretty much what Mickey and Director Becknell were pointing to, is the vibe. We got to think about that, unfortunately, today, our new residents' first experience is walking into that archway area, that courtyard. And it needs a refresh. It needs to kind of get perked up and reimagined as well. And so it was discussed amongst the properties committee that, we have the Koontz courtyard and it's rather warm and welcoming. And why can't we kind of have a little bit of that vibe over at the R.H. Johnson courtyard? Some of the vision is, once it gets a refresh, to perhaps do some wind down Wednesdays or Thursdays. Have somebody come out and just jam there in the evenings. Will it take root? We don't know. But we do know that what we have right now isn't working, and it needs something. In regards to the furniture and the presentation, Sabrina nailed it on the first crack at it. That's kind of what the vision, the vibe that folks were envisioning. As we go further into the presentation, that furniture is a no-go. I wouldn't put it out there if it was free. It's something so I've been paying a little attention to the residents at Kuntz, and a lot of the feedback was the couches are very, very nice and welcoming. The heavy duty wicker stuff is very deep, and some of that furniture I saw, I didn't even think about this. My time's up. Thank you. Some of that furniture was really deep, and a lot of the feedback I was hearing was our demographic, folks are, elderly or retired and have a hard time getting in and out of those heavier wicker chairs that are deep. And everybody that I've been talking to there in the Kuntz area really like the couch layout and the fireplace layout. So I really want to say that's the feedback that I've been hearing, and it gives off the vibe that the properties committee was seeking. And so anyways, all of that to say, I agree that if we need to spend a little extra, it's worthwhile. Thank you.
I think the interesting thing, because I did some research on some of that furniture, that the wicker furniture, the plain chairs, cost more than the couch.
Yeah.
So we're better off. And I think, as you said, we had a pop-up party there. Feels like yesterday, but I think it was maybe a week or so ago when I danced with the dinosaurs. But we were talking with people, and everybody was migrating toward the couches, and nobody wanted to sit in the chairs. And it was the exact same thing you just said, Mr. Scott, that too hard to climb out of that chair because it slouts, it leans backwards, and then you got to kind of crawl out. And I'm 5'9", so for me, my feet still touch the floor, but there was a lot of people whose legs were dangling off the end of the chair. So that's exactly right. But just FYI, the couches were actually less expensive than the configuration of chairs.
Oh, those chairs are bulletproof. I mean, I guess that's the kind of the thought, yes, we want longevity. We don't want to be replacing, Wayfair furniture by any stretch. But at the same time, we're looking for a vibe, we're looking for comfort, we're looking for ease of use. And so kind of put that into the equation on a heavier weighting, if you will. And again, it's that vibe. Don't need that antiquated stuff that's going to outlast us.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other questions? All right, seeing no other questions. Thank you, Herschel. Do we have a presentation from Todd Patty or from Pat O'Hara? Nothing? Okay, we have nothing to offer there for the capital improvement plan. He's going to have some information for us at our next meeting regarding Stardust. So that'll be great. I still see no questions online. Oh, I take that back. I have a couple of questions online now. Bruce Lees, does the rec center administer a fitness qualification test to new hires to ensure they are qualified to perform the tasks of the job they are hired for? So that would be a question we would send back to our HR department because they've already actually left the building. So, Cliff,
Just
can you
to get
respond?
Yeah. So we do have job descriptions, and part of the job descriptions includes physical, what the physical things are. So we don't, put them on a track and, hook them up to a machine and find out what their fitness level is. But they do know what the expectations are, and of course we manage and monitor that when we have them in those positions. Yeah, and then we also have with those job descriptions, we also have training and all that. So we're well aware if they can perform the functions of the job.
Right, so there is job training and safety training.
Yes.
I think that was really the question. And then we have Kastera Deline. She says, I totally agree, not very welcoming right now. Happy to hear there's recognition on this. Any thoughts about putting some tasteful signage on the Sun City West entrance that let people know that they're entering a 55-plus community with golf carts, bikes, walkers, in an attempt to slow speeders down? So I haven't seen any recommendations for signage for people to say you're now entering your grandma's village, but I'm sure that's something that we could discuss at a later date. But I'll tell you, it was funny when I first moved here. At the sign of Meeker and Granite Valley, the T had somehow withered away, and so the sign read Granny Valley. So I was quite happy to tell my kids to turn left on Granny Valley to get to my house, but they fixed it, so I no longer have that option. I see we have a speaker, Steve Erno. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, just as a reminder, we don't manage the roadways or any of the signage or anything in the right of way. So the short answer to that is no, we wouldn't be able to do something like that. Now, again, there's other opportunities maybe within our properties, but certainly not anything that has to do with the right of ways or the roadways.
I know that most of our roadways are very well marked where the golf carts are crossing between areas in the street. And so I think that's great that we have those crossways. That's very helpful. It's also very helpful that a lot of our streets, the name of the street that you're driving up upon is shown a half a block or so before you get there, so you don't have a lot of people that are slamming on the brakes to make a left-hand turn from the right-hand lane. Those things are all very valuable. Did you have a question, Bill?
Just one comment. The golf cart paths are marked with signs, but they don't have crosswalks markings, yet Briarwood does and Sun City does. We don't have any crosswalk markings on the streets for those pedestrians and the walking golfers to go across.
Well, that's a good comment suggestion. I would mail that right in. Thank you.
Yeah, we can talk to McDOT, Maricopa County Department of Transportation, but again, it's up to them whether they decide to put those in or not.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, and I actually have something else online. But we have a sign that says Sun City West. Could that be updated? So that's, again, just talking about the signage as you're coming into the property where it says Sun City West. I guess there's something we can talk about and think about if we want to amend that. That's got our logo, that's got our signage, that's become sort of our visual. So I'm not sure how anybody would make any changes there. But let's go ahead and move on. We've got quite a busy agenda. It's already almost 10 o'clock, and I think this meeting's going to go a lot longer than we'd hoped. So moving on, we're going to jump down to 3.03 and talk about the questions that were posed at the February 17th meeting. We asked everyone to submit their questions to Cliff, and Cliff went through them, consolidated them, and ended up with 28 unique questions. These questions and their answers have been attached to this agenda. The committee was made aware of the comments being published last week. So if you had any specific questions about any one item, I would love to entertain that. I don't see any questions online about the questions that were answered from last week's budget presentation. I don't see any questions from the audience. So do you have anything else to say about those questions, Cliff?
Well, first of all, I think we need to petition the county to change that road to Granny Valley Road. I think that would be completely appropriate. So I think we should definitely do that. Okay. But as far as the budget goes, thank you for all the questions. They're very in-depth. I thought they were very insightful. Wanted to call those out today in the agenda, provide them to the community along with the responses. And I'm happy to give some more color or some more detail, or if there's any other questions or comments regarding the budget. I know we had some conversations earlier offline with some committee members with some comments about different things. So happy to use that time right now to discuss those or talk about whatever the comments or questions are.
Any comments? Bill?
On the questions regarding golf fees, I think that the public versus the residents, I believe you're not including the rate for the golf cart rental. And very few public bring a golf cart versus the residents who typically all have golf carts. And so I think that is a difference in the rates. So and if you go to other courses that offer public, not just public's courses, but the others, golf carts are included in their rates. So when you try to compare their rates to our rates, you should add the golf cart to our rate and then compare it to their rate.
Correct. So if you, good point. But we're doing a presentation at Golf next week, their budget presentation. Included in that presentation is a comparable rate analysis with not only surrounding communities like Sun City and the Grand, but also surrounding public golf courses who we're competing with for outside golf, especially public golf. So you'll see on there what their rates are. We've called out when their rate includes the golf cart or not. But essentially, our outside rate, we compare it to peak season because that's when tee sheets are full. That's when it's the most competitive. And basically, currently we have a $94 rate when you include the golf cart for a non-member. And then proposed in the budget is to go to a $97 rate for that same period when you include the golf cart for public rate. So, but yes, I encourage everybody to either attend or watch the golf committee meeting. There's a ton of data in there. I know you all will love the data that's being presented in there. It talks about rounds and rates and trends and all that. So it's really good data, and I think it'll help inform you on what we do at golf.
Don, did you have a question?
I want to make a comment on what he brought up. I worked at a golf course for a number of years. And I do know that down here, we have a lot of people that come over from Grand with their golf carts because we are a lot less expensive than they are. So I don't really know how much cart rental we necessarily have unless it's visitors or family from out of town that come in and want to go out. And they don't have enough room in one cart at their house, so therefore they rent another cart from us. Cart rental has always been in addition to whatever the fee is for playing 18 holes or set 9 holes, as the case may be. So I just want to get a little clarification on that because I've done that for years.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
Yeah, just one comment on the public play rate versus the member guest rate. I have 3 kids, so if I bring my 3 kids golfing, I'm still paying for the extra cart as well. So if public pays 94, or whatever the number is, then I'm paying 94 also because I'm paying for the cart. I don't have 2 carts, I only have 1 cart. So I think there needs to be a wider variance between public play and member guest play rates.
Okay, these are all great discussions for the golf committee. I hope that you guys will take the opportunity to attend or watch the golf committee. I think attending and being able to come to the mic and speak your piece is probably the best idea. And that's not this Thursday, but a week from Thursday, right here in the lecture hall. So I hope you'll attend the golf committee meeting. Okay, Rick?
One quick question. That's the golf committee is, in my mind, one of the most important committees we have in this community. Okay, and they need, in certain cases, some guidance as to, from a financial situation, how this situation runs. The other situation is that when we start talking about the master plan and supporting it and financing it through operations, the golf is the only operational area that earns its own keep, meaning it supports the community through its fees because it's outstanding. So it's the only one that has a variable concept to it. So, so if we're gonna think about it, we have to set these rates correctly, and we have to do it with the purpose of, do we look forward? Do we support the master plan? That needs to be addressed at the golf committee.
What I'll say about that is part of the presentation at the golf committee is not only the rates that are being recommended, but why we're recommending those rates. So, you know, from our perspective, there's this misconception that because the Grand can charge $130 for a public rate, that we can somehow charge $130. We can't. We can't charge $130. Grand doesn't sell. The Grand does not sell public golf. They do 2 shotguns and starts when they're busy, and they don't have to sell tee times. They're sold. All right. Outside people aren't golfing at the Grand. Outside people aren't golfing at Portobello. They get 135 around. They're not golfing at Portobello either. We have 7 tee sheets. Sun City has 7.5 tee sheets. When people are looking to golf in Sun City, they think of us as 1, unfortunately. Okay? If they've golfed here before, they know that our conditions are better. That's the feedback that we get from them. But if you're coming from the East Valley, how many golf courses do you pass before you get to Sun City West? If you're coming from Central Phoenix, how many golf courses do you pass before you get to here? We cannot be the most expensive golf course. We can't even like get up there. We have to be very conscious of the rates that we're charging for people to come golf here that don't live here. And so there's a lot that goes into that structure. So I encourage you to come to the committee. We'll talk about all those things. Pat does a really good job of explaining why, you know, what the trends are and why we're thinking what we're thinking. So we just have to be careful. Now, as far as the rate difference between member guest and public, you know, there's a challenge there because we can't identify, we have no way of identifying a true person that comes from out of town and wants to golf with someone who lives here versus someone who's just coming as a member guest. They might just be a friend of somebody that lives in Phoenix or might live in Surprise, or they might drive their own golf cart over here from Portobello. In our POS system, there's no way to identify those golfers. So we have to, you know, we have to be careful because now if we are getting some software enhancements and things like that, the new portal, and then a newer version of our POS system that could give us some functionality that might help us with that. But currently, we really don't have a way for the starter to identify if that person is someone who drove their golf cart over here, or if they're riding with a member, or if they just stopped by to see if they wanted to, you know, join a tee sheet. They would know those public people. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not a simple thing to just figure that out. We did used to have a difference in the rate, and the golf committee said, you know what? 2 years ago, they aligned the rates together because they felt that a lot of the member guests that were coming here were people that actually lived here, and they weren't actual member guests, and that was the reason they decided to do that. That came from the committee, so, you know, and the board voted on it, and so we changed it. We aligned them together. I agree, just personally, if you have a guest, I feel like that should be a better rate. So if we get to a point where we can clearly identify that, I think that's something that we should definitely do personally. But again, the committee will discuss it, and of course, you guys can have input on that as well.
So can I add a comment, just a couple minutes?
One more.
Sorry. So I think us, if I'm not wrong, Sun City West and Grand both sell public rates on Golf Now. Is that correct? Okay. So that's one point I'm making, is that the people do have a choice, right? They have a choice to come to Sun City West, or maybe Sun City does it as well. I don't know. So they have that choice. But I think the problem is that, like you said, they think of us and Sun City as one and the same. But we need to set ourselves apart from them. And I feel the way to do that is to have a little bit higher rate. So I don't like the idea of even Grand coming over here, and instead of paying their rate, they're paying our rate, which is lower than what they pay anyway. So
we do have a higher rate than Sun City. You'll see that on the chart if you go to look at it. We do have a higher rate, higher public rate. We do have a higher rate. Now, we don't have dynamic pricing. That's another one of those features that we'll get once we get to the new system. So there is there is a dynamic pricing component that could be an opportunity. We're going to talk about that as well at the golf committee in the future. But still, you're talking about a small window of time for a small amount of tee times, because remember, our members get preferential treatment on the tee sheet. We're selling our most expensive rounds to our cheapest golfers. That's our business model. Go try to do that in the real world. You know you can't do that. That's what we do here. I mean, that is what we do. So we have to balance everything. We can't get too far out of whack on our prices because we're selling the scraps that are left over.
Okay, so I'm going to bring it into the golf fee discussion for today. You want to test me, Bill? Go ahead.
It's not with the rates themselves, but it's the competition and the price points, and I'll give you a couple examples. Membership at Grandview has decreased since I was a member there from $360 down to about $220 now. The last happened just recently when a large portion, 30 or so, left in a group because of the beer prices. Now that's a price point. They don't want to pay the price points at Grandview, and they are now at Trail Ridge or another course because of that price point. So there's a price, how elastic are our prices, and even internally, they will choose something different if the prices get too far and choose something cheaper like pickleball. Anything else, competition is anything that replaces your product. And so and price will matter. So I think this is kind of the business side of the pricing rather than the financial side. I just wanted to bring that point up.
And
Yeah, Don.
forgive me, but isn't it the fact that at Grandview, we have a restaurant that sells beer and they price their beer at a price point, and then you go on to our golf courses, it's quite a bit cheaper. And so, yeah, if you're having guys drinking a lot of beer, they're going to want to move from one to the other. But I think that's not something we need to talk about on Grandview. That's why they left.
Grandview has a full bar, so you can get, Bloody Marys or whatever you want to get. It's not just beer. So they're offering a full restaurant, stop kind of situation. So I think it's kind of comparing apples and oranges a little bit. But I really want us to continue on. I know this is a great conversation. I hope all my golfers up here will show up that Thursday for the golf committee meeting. And I'm gonna sort of force this conversation to move forward. Otherwise, we're gonna be here till noon. All right? Thank you, guys. All right, Cliff.
Yep. Just any other questions or comments? And we have the next presentation of this budget in full will be at the workshop on Friday to the governing board. So on the Friday the 13th, yes. For the second Friday the 13th, governing board workshop. So yeah, no. So there'll be a lot more discussion. There'll be some other perspectives. We'll probably have more audience. So definitely absorb that in some way. Either come or watch it in live or in record. But take that in as well.
So are you ready to move on to 3.04?
Sure. Yeah.
And start talking about the reserve fund
The
modeling?
the fun stuff.
The fun stuff.
You sure you don't want to talk about golf rates a little more?
I don't.
No?
I don't want to talk about golf rates anymore.
All right. Well, I'm gonna,
obviously not a golfer, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the back of the room. I don't know if you all had an opportunity to take a look at the modeling sheets. It's hard. I know it's hard to look at the sheets right now because they're tiny, which is why I'm gonna go to the back of the room. I can blow them up on the screen. I'm gonna point out some various things and talk about it, and then I'll come back here and there's a summary, a PowerPoint summary of all of the changes or all the things on the model that we'll go through just to kind of drive everything home, and then we can discuss from there. So let me do that.
So we're going to pretend that Cliff is now the Wizard of Oz, and he's moving up behind the big curtain to be able to have better controls over the presentation. He has put in an incredible amount of work, both he and Terry, looking at these different models and coming up with different ideas that we could consider for ourselves as to how we can fund the master plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Cliff. Go ahead, Cliff.
Okay, well, thank you. And so what we're going to do here is the first model on this presentation is the current, basically the current model that's being presented as the annual budget. So this is not factoring any additional spend for master plan, and this is what our model looks like until 2040. So, yes. So to just highlight some of the things in here, in this model, I wanted to point out a couple of things because there were some questions that came from this committee last time we talked about the model. One of the things was, I'm sorry, let me get up to the right model. One of the things was, what type of reserve study do we have for areas that could potentially be considered master plan areas? So what I wanted to do is call out 3 spaces. Now, these haven't been necessarily identified through the master plan. These are just spaces that have been linked in conversations to say, hey, we're waiting to a master plan to decide if we're going to move forward with a repair and replacement item at these places, okay? Now, one of these places is definitely linked to master plan. It's the Koontz Courts. So, that's obviously one of those places. But, so the 3 areas that we identified as spaces that could potentially be master plan spaces would be Koontz Courts, Social Hall, and Library. So these are areas that I just want to call out that, that what we have in terms of, in the reserve study, what do we have in terms of funding in the reserve study? So, because these would be funds that we would apply in a renovation of that space. So you could look at those as, yes, it's reserved money, it's money that's already there, but you can look at it as kind of tied to master plan. So you can include that in terms of master plan when it comes to how much money are we going to spend on master plan. So that said, with those 3 spaces identified, and keep in mind, any space that we look at around here, for the most part, is going to have reserve study dollars in it. So there's going to be an offset no matter what space we look at. So if we said, oh, this doesn't need to be a lecture hall anymore, we're going to make this, I have no idea. If some, what's that? Yeah, but we said, oh, we needed a cooking class, and we were going to do a cooking, and that's going to be in this hall. We would actually have dollars in the reserve study for this hall. So those would get absorbed as part of the master plan. But that said, if you look at just those 3 spaces, we have $3.6 million in the reserve study for those spaces. And those are big items. I mean, so the library has carpeting and shelving and millwork and countertops, and I mean, and that facility is old, right? So that's really one area. The social hall is another area that's got an $800,000 ceiling project in it. Koontz Courts, that's approximately $1 million in Koontz Courts that we have in the reserve study. So the good thing is we have this money already. We don't need to fund this money. It's already in the model. Okay, so that's a good thing when it comes to master planning. So I just wanted to call those 2 things out in the current reserve study. And again, I wanted to highlight them and what years that they're set in the reserve study now to complete. I will tell you, we could complete these next year. They've met their useful life beyond. It's just a matter of aesthetics and what you want to do. But so that money is already in the reserve study, and it's great. I also want to call out in the current modeling, by the time we get to 2040, well, let me back it up a little bit. By the time we get to this line item right here, this estimated inflow outflow, this is what we estimate every year to either add to the reserve fund or to pull out of the reserve fund based on our cash inflows and our cash outflows. Okay? So if you go down here, if you go through this year by year, the negative years are years where we have big irrigation projects. Okay? So in those years, we have to borrow from not borrow, would take from the reserve fund to fund those big irrigation projects. But by 2035, all of those projects are complete. And then what happens? We literally stay positive every year in our reserve, in our basically operating cash inflow. We stay inflow every year after that. And that goes through. I mean, if you model this out to 2050, our FFB percent's like 80%. And Mickey knows this already, and Rick, you know this already, because we modeled this out last year when we were talking about the investment policy. So that said, we've got some leaner years in up to 2035, but once we get past those irrigation projects, we're in good shape. So by year 2040, we have $47.2 million in our reserve account. Our fully funded balance is approximately $74 million, and we're at a 64% FFB percent by 2040. Okay, now the further you get out, obviously, the less reliable the data becomes, but this is pretty reliable data up into 2040. So look, we're in good shape with our current budget and our current modeling without spending any additional money on master planning. Now, we don't know what the community is going to want. We have an idea currently. We can go on and look at all the data currently, what we have, and we've collected a ton of it. And we can have a good idea what the community wants, but not only do we not know what they want, we still don't have the study back to say, well, where are we going to do it and how are we going to pay for it and all that. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but we know that we're going to need to raise some funds for master plan. Okay, because we don't have enough. We do model 1.4 million a year in new capital. We do have 3.6 million sitting in reserve study funding for certain places that could be potential areas, but we know that we're going to need more. Okay, so operationally, we looked at it. We said, okay, what if we injected $6 million in additional new capital funds for master planning into our modeling? What would happen, and how would we inject it? So we thought, over a 4-year period, we would inject $2 million the first 2 years and then $1 million the last 2 years, and take us out to 2032 from 2028. All right. These are just the assumptions that are built into the modeling. These could change, but we wanted to get a good idea of what that would look like. So when we do this, by 2029, which is the Pebblebrook irrigation project, that's the year that's slated for. When we do that, by 2029 in the modeling, we go down to 39%. So we dip below the 40% threshold. We stay under 40% essentially till we complete the irrigation projects in 2035 at 38%. And then in 2036, based on the modeled inflows and outflows, we get back to 40%. And then, of course, stay with the positive cash flow, stay at over 40% there on out. And finally, when we get to 2040, our reserve fund balance goes from 47.2 to 42.2. Our fully funded balance goes up to 78 million versus 74 million. And our fully funded balance percentage goes down from 64% to 54% by 2040 in this model. So keep in mind, this is if you add all of those new items, so you've got the 1.4 million a year, you got the 3.6 million in reserve funding, and that would change based on the areas that would be considered. That could go up or down. And with the additional 6 million, that gives you 15.2 million for master plan items. Now, I know it sounds like a lot of money, but I believe Sun City is looking at a rec center right now, and it's 30 million. They've got to build a brand new rec center. Now, we don't have to do that, but to put it in perspective, 15 million stout, it's good, but it's not a lot. But it could get us some really nice things that could come out of the master plan, because we don't, I mean, look at the courts courtyard, R.H. Johnson courtyard, excuse me, $100,000, and you could really class that up and make it really nice and be a space. Now, if you wanted to go beyond that and put, some sort of draw, like a wine bar or coffee wine bar or something like that, overlooking the pool and the great lawn, and put some shade out over the grills and all that. I mean, that's additional things that would be part of master plan. That this is what we'd use that capital for. Okay, so 15.2 million, which is exciting. One additional thing is that we add 4.3 million in additional. I know Bill's going to love this. This is the additional FFB that comes from that 6 million. Oh, not the 6 million, from the 6 million and the 1.4 million. So to Mr. Weaver's point, he always points it out, is whenever you do anything new, it adds to the fully funded balance. So we modeled that out as well and took that into account. So we want to make sure we were capturing as many things as we could in the modeling. So by the time you get to the fully funded balance in 2040 of 78.2 million, you've added 4.3 million from the new capital that you added at that time. And I basically used a 10-year, 20-year model on those projects, and I took 40% of the value of that new, because some of that new is just going to be building and infrastructure. It's not going to be part of a reserve study. Okay. So how are we going to fund it? So we took we made some assumptions in this model in terms of how we would fund this additional 6 million, because that's essentially what we're adding, because we have the 3.6 already in the reserve study. We've already modeled the 1.4 per year. So it's really the 6 million that we have to account for. So how do we raise those funds so that we hold our 40% in the modeling? So what we've proposed in this model, and we talked about this in the last budget presentation, was to, in addition to the annual dues increase, so put it this way, in addition to the 1.5 million in inflows that we have modeled, so that 1.5 million includes a dues increase every year, an increase in costs. That dues increase is 3 to 4% in the model. Also in the modeling is the APF fee, which has a 3% increase per year. All right. So in addition to those normal increases, what would we need to do if we started today? What would we need to do? So if we tacked on a $20 dues increase, and in the budget is a $22 dues increase. All right, so we would have our $22 dues increase to hit the target in our operating budget this year for the reserve fund allocation. And then we did a separate $20 added on top of that. And we collected that $20 for the next 5 years. We also added $300 in APF. So in the budget is a $200 APF increase. So we added $300 to that. Okay, and collected that over the same 5-year period. We could fund the 6 million and hold our 40%. And then what we would do in 2032 is modeled in 2032 as a dues increase. We would offset that dues increase in 2032 by that $20. okay? We would offset the APF increase that year by the $300 to put us back on track with our normal modeled out dues increases. All right? So that's the way this is modeled. We raise those funds in that period of time. The beautiful thing, I know we talked about, doing a special assessment, and boy, that would be easy, right? I mean, it would be really easy, hey, here's an invoice, but there's a lot of things that got to happen. A, it's got to pass a vote. So you got to send that to a community vote, which I think it would. But then B, I got to bill it and collect it. So that's another challenge, which we could do. All right. But what kind of a strain would that put on our community and our resources of our community members? So the beautiful thing about us is we're not a tiny HOA. We don't need to do that. We've got a good, healthy reserve fund that we can take and spread that out over time and collect it without having that huge impact to community members. So that's why we're proposing this type of model. That's always an option, but that's why we're proposing this type of model. We feel like this way we can collect it over time. It's less of an impact in everybody's budget, and we can weather the storm and still stay at 40% in the reserve study by doing that in our modeling. So yeah, so I believe I called out all the things already that this does. Yeah. Okay. So that gets us to 63% at 78.2 million and 49 million in the reserve fund. All right. So there's been some discussion about those irrigation projects. We've been discussing it for a long time, ever since I've been here, for the 4.5 years that I've been here. And assuming we get Stardust approved in the capital improvement budget this year, we'll have 3 under our belt. And, we're doing them in order of age. So Pebblebrook is next on the list after Stardust. The way we handle these irrigation projects is we do them, we have 1 year for pump station and planning, and then the next year is the irrigation project. So this year we're doing the pump station at Stardust, and we got the planning dollars, and we got the planning done for Stardust this year. Next year is the irrigation project itself, and that's in the capital budget improvement budget for 2026, 2027. And assuming that gets approved, the next year we would propose the planning and pump station for Pebblebrook, and then the following year we would propose in 2029 we would propose the irrigation project itself for Pebblebrook. Now, if we change the cadence on that and we said, okay, let's take the irrigation projects and instead of a 2-year gap, let's increase that to a 3-year gap. Spread out that spend. What impact would that have on the FFB percent? So in this model, we did that. And once we did that, I think it brought 2020 or 2029 to like 38% at the time, or not 2029, 2031 to 38%. So what would we need additional in the budget to raise the funds to keep it at 40% by 2031 would be an additional $5. So the last model, there's $20. In this model, there's $5. And then an additional $100 in APFs. And with the same premise that once you get to 2031 and you raise the funds, you apply those increases to the, you reduce the 2032 proposed dues increase and APF increase by those two amounts once you get there. So this is beautiful because you can really soften the blow and really use the reserve study and the reserve funds to fund these projects. Now, there are some downsides, of course, right? Because you're basically, there's going to be some operational inefficiencies because the irrigation systems are high maintenance. The turf is, it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to get those things done. So and then you've got the electrical inefficiencies from the pump stations, the water inefficiency. You're throwing water where you don't need it. You're not getting water where you do need it. So there's inefficiencies in operationally, which can be managed. The beautiful thing about an irrigation project too is when you replace all those sprinkler heads, you get 5-year warranty on them. So you don't buy any sprinkler heads for 5 years, which is pretty awesome. So there are some inefficiencies due to that, but those are manageable. One of the other downsides is with a 3-year gap, the projected irrigation costs increase by $2.3 million. So adding that inflation onto those projects and extending that, basically, instead of being completed by 2035, you're completed by 2039, you add $2.3 million in cost for those irrigation projects. So that's one consideration as well. But at the end of the day, you hold your 40%. Your FFB is 59% by 2040, and you have $46 million in the bank and a $77 million FFB. So now what I'm going to do is I'm come down there. I got a little presentation. I'm just going to summarize what I just said, and then field any questions. Does that sound good? Okay. All right, so just going to summarize what we just talked about. So in the model, we have some assumptions. So this is the model, the first model that I showed you, which is included with this year's budget. We have a 3 to 4% yearly dues increase with golf fee increases in there to cover the increased expenses over that time. All right. At the end of the day, in the model, we get to 1.5 million coming from operations. So that reserve fund allocation in excess. All right. That's what's modeled out. We have a 7 to 8% reserve fund allocation. That's what creates that 1.5 million in the modeling. That holds us to our 40% FFB, and then the further we get out, the better we look. All right, so in the model, the first model that we inject the 6 million in additional funds, we know that we have 3.6 million in those areas that we called out. Keep in mind, these are just examples of potential areas. These are not definite areas, other than Coons. Coons, we know, we've called that out. But these other areas, library and social hall, these are potential areas. But 3.6 million there. By 2040, this is with no capital, sorry. By 2040, we're at 47.2 and 64% FFB percent. Now, if we put 6 million in there, with the potential areas, the 1.4 million a year, and the 6 million, that puts us at 15.2 million for master plan projects. Okay. There's an additional FFB that happens when we inject that new capital. So by year 2040, our FFB is 4.3 million higher. Do you like that, Bill? Mm-hmm. It is 4.3 million higher. The FFB percent drops to 39% in fiscal year 29 when we do that. It goes down to 32% by 2031, and it recovers to 40% by 2036. And then we reduce our modeling new capital spend. Also, I forgot to call that out. What I do from 32 to 35, instead of 1.4 million a year, I reduce that to 400,000 a year. That's really what we do without any master plan capital. So I thought that was a likely scenario. So I did decrease those years to 400,000. Then it goes back up to 1.4 after that. I'm guessing we're gonna have new capital fatigue by the time we get there. But, and then in 2040, in this model, 42.2 million in the reserve fund and a 54% FFB by 2040. Now, if we collect an additional $20 and $300 from 27 to 31, it'll increase dues revenue by 2.5 million. It'll increase APF revenue by 1.7 million. And then the additional dues and APFs applied to FY 2032 will be decreased by those amounts because we'll have raised the capital that we need. And then that keeps the FFB percent at least 40%. And by 2039, essentially gets us right back to where we were in our originally modeling at approximately 50 million and 63% FFB. Now, if we take the approach where we spread those irrigation projects out and create a 3-year gap versus a 2-year gap, move Pebblebrook, so move Pebblebrook from 29 to 2030, and then go 33, 36, 39, we're done by 2039, and implement a $5 increase and a $100 APF increase, that'll generate an additional 616,000 in member dues, 550,000 in APFs. Again, we'll reduce to 2032 once we get there. If we get there sooner, maybe we do it sooner. Don't know. If we don't get there sooner, maybe we extend it a little further. So we've got to keep that in mind too. The idea is that you raise the funds and you stay at a 40%, all right? But likely that's what it would take based on the modeling. So it keeps the FFB at 40%. The FY30 to FY39 increased project cost for those projects will be 2.3 million. So keep that in mind. But your FFB will be 46 million approximately and 77 million in fully funded balance. Now your reserve balance will be 46 million. And you'll be at approximately 59% by then. Phew.
Good job, Wizard.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see there was a tremendous amount of planning in this modeling idea. And I think we had like 4 or 5 different models at one time and narrowed it down to 2 because we thought it was going to be a little too verbose. So with that, I'll start on this side for a change. Do you guys have any questions about the models you just saw? No questions? Mickey?
So I think that I think this is a great starting place for this. Great starting place. What I like about it is that you do put your goals out there, 40%. What will it take to get us there, right? So what will it take to get us there? I think that one of the things, and the other thing too, it's quite simple. I mean, $20 over 5-year increase is $100 per person, per member. Over 5 years for a 2-person family, it's $200. So when we look at that, it's over 5 years. I think that is a very reasonable ask for master planning. On the other hand, as we all know, there's always pushback, right? So there's always pushback. Almost honestly, if we increase it $5 more or $20 more, there's going to be some pushback there. So one of the things that I do think that we need to do is come up with our game plan for selling the beauty of the master plan, right? Selling the improvements to our community and the long-term prospects, both in terms of attractiveness to younger people, potential increases in your real estate values, all of that, right? And the social connectiveness, which is another thing that we are really looking at in this. So like I said, I really like it. What I don't like is I don't like $5, $100, and $2.3 million more in costs because we decided to take big projects and push them out. As we have seen time and time again, pushing out big projects does not make them go away. It just makes them more expensive. There's not a thing in this that we don't have to do, particularly with regard to the irrigation projects. They are gigantic expenditures, and thank you that we've planned well enough over the years that we can afford them. Okay, so I do like, I like the first plan, $20 a year and $20 a year and the increase in the APFs. I would also say that that's where you start, but perhaps you have a year that we do a little bit better and the funding that goes into the reserve fund says we don't have to do it, right? So we'll just stay on top of it, but I think it's a very good place to start.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think great points. As far as selling it, I think part of selling it also is keeping people engaged. And what a better way to keep them engaged than charge them for it, right? Right? So you have that. But of course, as we get the plan, we'll have the plan sometime in the fall, we think September. And it has to be a huge part of it. What are we going to get? We just spent $280,000 on the document. We're going to choose to fund it because otherwise we just have a $280,000 notebook of data. But part of this definitely is engagement, and it doesn't stop with the master plan gathering information. We're gonna we will be out front on and explaining what these dollars, how are they being spent, and engaging and getting input from the community and how we're going to do it. So.
I love your modeling, by the way. That's a fantastic job.
Well, thank you.
I have a question though on when we're going to extend the irrigation projects. Do we have some that are already completed? Because it didn't sound like we were going to do 7 courses.
Yeah. So Stardust will be our third if it gets approved in this year's budget, and that'll be completed by next October. Yeah, October, November. And so that would be 3 under our belts. We've got one other kind of older turf course where we got to do some significant turf reduction to stay with our water allotment. Yeah. And that'll be Pebblebrook. And then it goes Desert Trails, Trail Ridge, Deer Valley, and then Desert Trails are the last 3 after Pebblebrook.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John?
So just to understand it, the $20 increase and the $300 increase raises about $6 million over 5 years. And if you do the extension of the irrigation projects, the $5 and the $100 raises about 1.16.
Let me back up. The $20 and the $300 raises approximately 4.2 million.
Okay.
So you're already absorbing some of that new capital with your fully funded, with your reserve, your current reserve balance.
So you're only having to go into the reserve for 1.8.
Well, yes.
Okay, and so then
on the 6 million, but already modeled is the 1.4 million and the reserve study items that are existing.
Okay.
Yes.
And then so what does that equate to a one-time assessment, just out of curiosity, to raise 4.2 million?
Well, it's basically, let's call it 27,000 per,
4.2 divided
per
by
dollar.
Yeah.
Yes, 27,000 per dollar.
So about $200
Yeah.
per person. And then how much are you raising on the $5 and the $100 version? 0.166?
Yeah, yeah.
So you're using the reserve fund to get 4 million out of it, 4 point whatever.
Yeah, so yes, you are.
So what's that equivalent to a one-time assessment?
The 1.6?
Yeah. $40?
No, it'd be 100.
Okay.
Per couple.
Per person.
Per person. Yes. So we have approximately, I would say 27,000 members. It's actually, it's 26,000, closer to 26,000 because we have tenants. Yeah. So it's actually approximately 26,000.
So 1.16 divided by 26,000 is $44
Yeah.
for a one-time assessment.
Yes.
But that's also extending out the irrigation project.
That's extending the irrigation with a
and
3-year
having
gap.
the potential $2.3 million additional cost. Versus the $20 increase with the APF increase, we wouldn't move out the irrigation project. Everything stays the same, and we have the one-time 5-year hit.
You know, something to be said also for extending it over time is it gives you flexibility. It gives you the flexibility to raise more or to raise less as well. So, you know, because things change year to year. And a big part, the variability that we have here with bowling and golf, member guest fees, you know, all these things that are kind of out of our control. I mean, they are a little bit, but things that aren't like mandated like dues, APFs is one of them as well. I mean, if the state comes out and says, hey, you can't charge APFs anymore, holy smokes. Anyway, so we'd have to, you know, every year we'd have to assess, and we can't commit the board to a budget every year either. So, you know, this would have to extend. So maybe it may, yes. So maybe a benefit to doing a special assessment because it's guaranteed. Yeah, absolutely. All these things have to be considered for sure. Yes.
I'll go back to what I did last meeting and say that we need to also consider in raising funds around here to have some very minor charges for things. Like you go and use the pool, it costs you $1. You want to use the gym equipment, it costs you $1. It's cheap, but it does raise funds. Just like we were raising funds all the time on golf and on bowling. So I think we need to expand it. That's all.
All right, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I've got to, first, I am just so excited that we're even moving forward on this master plan and that we're smart enough to think about how to pay for it. I think I said at the last meeting, the last thing I want to do is ask everybody what they'd like to have and then turn around and tell them, yeah, we just can't afford it. We are $20 away from being able to afford what we'd like to have. As a matter of fact, when I saw your reduction, I'm glad you brought it up, when I saw the reduction in new capital down to 400,000 instead of 1.4, I thought just the opposite. If we turn this $20 on, leave it on, and change our new capital from 1.4 allotment to 2.4 a year. And because we have to continue to evolve. You know, I spent a lot of time last night. I happen to enjoy a cigar and sit back outside. And I spent a lot of time last night on YouTube just looking at 55 and older community. You know, there's a lot of real estate people that go out and review them all. Where when they mention top 5 or best 5, or we either aren't mentioned or we get a special honorable mention that we're an incredibly full of amenities along with a reasonable price, but we're outdated. I mean, that's just a fact. It's a wonderful place to live. It's beautiful, but if you like the new shiny this or that, we're just outdated. So I really like the $20 edition. I didn't see a reason to stop it in 32. I saw you know, I don't want this to be a one and done. I thought the master plan was evolving, that we're always going to be looking 5 years ahead, always looking 5 years ahead. I'm certainly not in favor of an assessment. To my knowledge, we've never had one. So I don't want to start something because that'll be in every 2 years, a special assessment for this and a special assessment for that. We can absorb $20, and I'm not trying to be insensitive to the people that are here that an extra $20 or 42. I mean, we might as be realistic. When it hits your, it's 42. It can affect some of the members here, but I think that that's a small group of people, and it's a minority and not the majority, and that we can really open up doors by taking that particular plan, that $20 plan. But I don't see a reason to turn it off. But I do want to tell you this. We're on this committee because this stuff, we really enjoy this stuff, right? There's people that don't, and but it was very, very helpful the way you laid it out.
Right. Not everybody loves looking at all these numbers, but they count on us to be good stewards for this for them and to make our best, give our best advice and to pass that forward to the governing board and tell the governing board that the committee has looked at this and this is what we think is the best plan for the community. So this is your first blush at it, and we'll be able to talk about this a couple more times. Thanks. Dave?
Yeah, I just want to thank Cliff and Ann. I believe you guys both spent a lot of time on this together, working on it. And Terry, all of you for putting this together. I think you've given us great options to think about. Personally, at the moment, I would prefer the one-time option, but that's just at the moment. It's early in the process, right? So we'll see what happens. But the other thing I wanted to say is I would not be in favor of deferring irrigation. I think we need to continue on that path. And Pebblebrook is next, and Pebblebrook is a very good golf course, and I wouldn't want to defer that at all on Pebblebrook.
Thank you, Dave. David?
First of all, again, as has been expressed by others, there's been a lot of work here, and thank you very much. And that was really a great explanation, Cliff. I think that dividing out those things of Coons, the library, et cetera, separating that out so we had a better understanding where they are in the planned CIP versus what is in the master plan and things really helps me. I guess I want to go on record and say that I would oppose any delaying of the golf course. I think that's a dollar short, and I think that will ultimately you'll pay a higher price down the road. I think we've learned that from the cost of inflation. I guess I have a question, two questions, I guess, regarding this. Not the model itself, but the issue of how we obtain the sources for the master plan. I've been watching some of the things in the master plan. They're doing a great job. I guess that one of the advantages this community has been, there has been foresight, knowing that there were going to be needs of things in the golf courses, so we could afford that payments of those improvements that are being done, unlike some of our surrounding communities here that are now facing that challenge. I wonder about in the master plan if $6 million is sufficient. You mentioned the fact that coming forward with Sun City, they're looking at a replacement for a rec center of $30 million. And I don't know about our aging centers. We talked about the fact of how we look differently from other communities. And I just would pose that more to the master planning committee because I know they're doing a great job. I guess the question is, do we have that coming forward in the future that will have to be considered so the $6 million is going to be sufficient? Number one. Number two is that as other entities that are nonprofits that have requirements for these type of capital improvements and they're dues dependent, such as universities or hospitals, they can't depend totally upon raising their fees forever. So there has to be other sources of revenues. And your proposal is really a secure one because we know we will have that money coming in. That's a beauty of that plan. The question is, are there other sources to look for funding? And I recall back being here because my family's been coming here since 1998. And when the Sun Dome was here, and there was a lot of controversy, they needed $10 million to raise for the improvements of it, and that ultimately was one of the downfalls that led to it being torn down. But the community had committed and had raised, if I recall correctly, over $1 million. $1 million to that that had to be returned to the community members because it was another source of revenue because they felt there was a need. I know there's a disadvantage. We are a 501c4 that we can't have tax deduction, but projects such as the library, there may be interest in somebody donating something in their name that would take that off that cost budget. So to me, the only question I have, are there other means by which we look at revenues to meet the master plan demands in the future? Not anything wrong what you've done. I understand it. I think it's a solid financial approach, but I'd like to consider other options, and I think that's part of what we should have in a discussion.
Want to respond, Cliff? Or Steve Ernos at the mic? Steve, would you like to have a statement?
Yeah, well, for the first part of it, I'll let Cliff mention some of the other parts, but to your point, I completely agree. What's the amounts that we're talking about, there probably are going to be more projects at more cost than that will cover. But you got to remember too, the master plan is intended to go for at least 10 years. So we can only predict the future as much as we can predict, right? So we just know that we need to start, or at least I would highly encourage the board and this committee and everyone to begin funding the master plan now, because it's going to have, we know there's going to be projects going to come out of it. And what's going to happen though, once we get there and we look at what are they proposing, what are they suggesting, what is the community wanting, then we'll have a better idea, but at least we'll have under our belt some amount of financing. And I know it's been said, but I just want to say as well, kudos to Cliff and his team. Terry, I mean, they did an amazing job and really does a phenomenal job of putting it in terms that everyone can understand. But I just want to mention that as far as the master plan itself, you know, they're going to come back and they're going to have things and they're going to have costs in there. And to your point, I do believe it's going to be more than what we're talking about. $15 million sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it's not when it comes to projects. I mean, you start talking about building additions or whatever that might come with that, it'll go fast. Now, that'll be something, though, whatever, 5 years from now, we would be having the same conversation with a different committee and a different board as to how do you want to continue to fund these things and what do you want to do going forward. So I just want to address that portion of it, and then if you want to take over from there.
Thank you, Stephen. Cliff, do you have something to add?
Yeah, regards to fundraising, we've actually spoken with our called professionals regarding that, and there's nothing stopping a community member from donating to us. We can collect donations. We are not a C3, so it's not a tax deductible scenario for that individual. Also, when you start getting into endowments and things like that, having, setting up 501c3 corporations to specifically fund things, there's a lot of things that are, there's a lot of things that would have to happen legally and from a tax perspective for that to happen. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it doesn't really fit our purpose as a community, as a essentially HOA planned community. So, but again, there's nothing stopping someone from donating. And then when you do endowments and things like that, you have to be careful because they get very specific, and then you can only use the funds from that are generated from those funds. So you can't use the principal. You can only use the interest and that's only up to a 6% or something like that. It becomes very, very arduous and technical.
Thanks for that feedback. I think that's we've seen a lot of that. Rick.
First of all, thanks for the presentation. It's been outstanding. I remember when we first put this model together back a year and a half ago, Mickey and the team put it together, and we've said, this is going to be a useful live document. And I've seen that you used it, which is great. It's extended its useful life, to put it that way. As far as funding this, we've only used the consistent revenue streams we have, APF funds and what do you call it, the fees. My question is, have we looked at other revenue streams, such as other clubs putting in usage things like the golf, you know, like the pickleball, like the tennis club? The use of those facilities, they're not being charged for any of that. Is that an option? Okay, not saying it is, but it may be an option. The other situation is we're looking at it as business as usual. And while you've brought in the Kuntz and the library and the social center, there may be other units within their facility based upon the clubs and their declining or inclining membership, that we have space available to use for something else. That's part of the master plan. And like Dave said about the use of maybe one of our facilities in 10 years will have to be rebuilt. So that should all be included in the master plan. But I think we're off to a good start, but I think we need to expand the horizons on how we pay for this stuff. So.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Part of the master plan is to assess all of our spaces. So that's going to be part of our master plan document that we have, and which is why I was so really calling out the fact that these aren't the only spaces. These may not be the spaces. It was just an example of some certain spaces. And then as far as raising the funds, yeah, it's just a slippery slope when you start charging for certain things, especially things that are included in dues. It's a very slippery slope. And there's a lot of unintended consequences that happen from that. Yes, you're generating additional capital, but what else? What are the unintended consequences of that? For example, we have people that belong to 6 or 7 different clubs. Well, if you're going to charge me to be part of a club, I'm only going to join one club, you know, or I'm not going to join any club. Let's just get together, and we have to provide the space. The space, we still have to air condition it. We still have to, you know, man it. So we just have to be careful when we're looking at charging for amenities that are included with our member dues. So, and then as far as you know, those variable revenue areas, those are the areas where we put in the model $1.5 million coming from operating, and maybe we get 1.8 million. Maybe we increase the dues 1 year or whatever. But I wouldn't want to model that in raising funds specifically for master plan, because it's not guaranteed. Even APFs aren't guaranteed. I mean, we have some pretty good statistical data that says we collect 1,100 a year. I mean, going back as far as you can look, but you know, dues are the only thing that's guaranteed for us. So if we're going to put a model together, it's going to be based on dues. And then again, if we have a good year, if we, you know, instate something that saves us, you know, on the expense side or generates additional revenue, we have 330,000 rounds of golf. Great. That just adds, that's just gravy.
I would not extend the irrigation projects, because you're cutting off the head of the most valuable revenue stream we have, and you start playing with that revenue stream, all of this stuff kind of takes a different turn.
Perfect. Bill?
I agree with not deferring the irrigation. Also, thank you for this charting. I'm just happy that you didn't give it to me on an Excel spreadsheet, or I'd still be inside it somewhere.
By design at all.
My only comment is maybe it's a step further, as once we start deciding on each particular project, and once they're looked at, they're going to have to be sold to each individual resident, because you're going to ask money for them. You're going to have to, how does this affect me? How does this affect my house? How does it affect personally? You can't just, in an overall thing, this is good for Sun City West. That's not going to sell it to me in my house. It's kind of like the affordability issue in those. It's going to have to be dealt with, and you're going to have to ask when you come to each project, how does this affect each particular person? is it a benefit for that person, or is it just a benefit virtually?
Well, part of our mission and vision and our budget goals are to keep the place looking nice and keep it attractive for the future. And so the good thing is we have that already. But yes, what's in it for me? Always the.
So we do have a
always
couple of
gotta say.
questions online, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Bruce Lees, 6232, 135422. So in 2031, my dues would have increased $116 at a 3.5%. In addition to the $100 MP contribution, total of $216 over the next 5 years, should not have to pay daily use fee. So
Sounds about right.
that-
Yeah. It's, I didn't
You
do it.
summarized
I
that
didn't
well
put
for
a
you?
pencil to it, but yeah, that would be the proposed impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have Kisara Deline, 144402. Also agree, thank you for all the work, much appreciated. Would be good to have a way to have people donate, obvious people who are interested as an option, even with the challenges that come with that. So that was another request to make the endowments or the donations more realistic or more available. Okay, and I see we have a guest coming to the microphone. Mr. Scott?
Of course, of course. I guess my first thought is, one thing I hate about the airlines is if I'm going to jump on an airplane, nothing I hate worse than having to pay extra for a freaking suitcase. They know I'm going to need a suitcase or picking a seat. That a la carte mentality, or this daily usage for this, or it's a nickel here, a nickel there, that a la carte model drives me nuts. I don't mind paying a premium price for a premium service. I'm good with that. Hence, a flat rec center fee model. The question I have, it's two questions actually. You know, I look at this holistically. I look at this for everybody, not just from a golf course perspective or a pickleball perspective or somebody in the metal or art. I look at this from everybody's point of view. And I lean towards the sliding of the retrofit cycle. My one question is, was there any thought on sliding Stardust as well? Sliding the entire structure 1 year with a 3-year gap. What kind of ripple did that have?
No, I did not model that. Part of the issue, the reason why we didn't model that is we're already in phase 1 of that. So we just we're in the process of installing the pump station. We've also done the planning for that. So, you know, it makes sense to continue on with that. So we did not model it.
I just want to look under every rock and think outside of the box and anything and everything before we go to the well. The easy answer is $20. We all know that. You know that, I know that. But from the community perspective, holistically, we're just keep on going to the well, keep going to the well. And we got to just make sure that is the answer. And then my other question is, obviously 40% is the bare bone minimum. We're all uncomfortable with that. Where's the fully funded balance cap to where it's like, we can kind of throttle down and ease up on the dues, or is 68 or 73% fully funded? I mean, is there a cap where it's like, we need to spend money or save money, or, you know what I mean?
Good question. I would say that, that's part of the problem with modeling out so many years is there's just so many uncertainties. So there's a lot of assumptions that are built into that model that could change.
Favorably or unfavorably.
Unfavorably or favorably.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that for us, it's that, 45 to 50% FFB is really where we should be, because again, that's not only repair and replacement, that's enhancements and new. So, that's where we should reside. But, modeling out that far, that's just, there's a lot. There's 5.1 return on the reserve fund in there, 5.1% return. We're going to have years. Yeah, we're gonna have years that were better. Like, for example, so far this year, last year was one of those years, but we could have some leaner years. So, there's just so much in there. But yeah, I would say that 45 to 50%, assuming there were no big new projects down the road, like a master plan type thing, is probably a good sweet spot.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you, Cliff. We have one
Thank
more
you.
question online, and that is from Bruce Lees, 135422. Money budgeted for unfilled positions isn't returned to operating budget and is transferred to the reserve fund. So be returned to members with less dues, increased rates. I think it should have been returned, but yeah.
Yeah, goes in the reserve fund. Absolutely. When we model out the reserve fund as well, it's incorporated in the overall budget, but it's not a direct decrease to the following year. It's, again, yeah.
All right, I think we've had a great introduction to some options, giving us some good food for thought over the next several weeks. This is going to be presented to the governing board as well this next week. So I'm sure there'll be more opportunities to discuss whether it's a $5 option or a $20 option, or whether we're going to delay any of the irrigation projects or not delay the irrigation projects. I feel like I have a right and left side of my golf team over here. So thank you very much, Cliff. I'm going to let you out of the hot seat for the moment, and we'll run through committee comments. And I'll start over here with you, Bill.
No comment.
Great,
None.
great,
None.
great,
None.
great.
No comment.
John? No comment. Don? No comment. Mickey? No comment.
No comment.
No comment. Very good. You all are very nice to me today. Okay. So, not intentionally. Just have to go to the bathroom, I guess. Okay, time for a break. All right, so I am going to, this meeting has been recorded, and so it can be viewed on YouTube. If you have questions or comments, you can certainly post those back to the Budget and Finance Committee. The next Budget and Finance Committee meeting is March the 17th here in this lecture hall, and I adjourn this meeting at 11:12. Thank you.